The screen freezes. Soraya Duvin stands at the counter, rain dripping from her torn apron onto marble floors, so polished they reflect the disgust in every eye watching her. Her hand trembles around a small plastic key, the kind that unlocks safety deposit boxes in banks that don't usually let people like her through the front door. Behind a mahogany desk, Marcos Vardani laughs. It's the kind of laugh that owns rooms, that bends spines, that reminds everyone exactly who controls the air they breathe. His tattooed fingers drum against expensive wood while his smile cuts through the space between them like a blade. Your balance, he repeats, louder now, making sure the entire hall hears the joke. Sweetheart, this isn't a soup kitchen. The ATM's outside if you need to check your nickels. The woman at the computer, Celine Marquardt, exhales through her nose. Her white blouse looks like it's never met a stain it couldn't reject. She glances at Soraya with professional politeness stretched so thin it might snap. Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Soraya doesn't look at Marcos, doesn't flinch when his boots scrape against the floor as he stands. She spent 3 years learning how to make herself invisible, how to swallow insults like vitamins, how to survive in a city that treats exhaustion like a personal failure. But her father's last words loop in her head like a prayer she never understood until now. If anything happens to me, go to your balance. She pushes the key across the counter. Account DUV 14B, she whispers. I'm authorized. Celine's fingers hover over the keyboard. For a moment, the only sound is the rain hammering against floor-to-ceiling windows and the soft click of manicured nails on keys. Then the screen blinks. Once, twice. A red notification bar appears. Restricted access. Level V clearance required. Celine's eyes widen. Just slightly. Just enough. The man beside her, Draven Holt in his perfect gray suit, leans closer. His voice drops to something sharp and confused. Level V accounts don't exist for civilians. Marco stops laughing. The marble hall feels colder suddenly, like someone opened a door to a place no one was supposed to see. Soraya's knees lock. She tells herself to breathe, to stay standing, to not collapse under the weight of every stare now drilling into her back. Celine types again, faster this time. Successor, Soraya Duvin. Balance, protected funds, access granted. The screen flickers, and then a number starts to load, digit by digit. 1, 2, 3. Marcos moves toward the counter, his smile gone, replaced by something far more dangerous than mockery. His voice is soft now, too soft, the kind of quiet that precedes violence. What account did you just open? What secret was Soraya's father hiding that even the most powerful man in the city didn't know existed? The computer screen pulses with blue light. Celine's hand shakes as she tries another override command, but the system refuses. A second notification appears, this time with a federal seal stamped across the top. The kind of seal that doesn't show up for people who clean floors and serve food to customers who won't look them in the eye. Draven steps back from the counter like the keyboard might explode. These accounts don't exist, he mutters, more to himself than anyone else. They're not supposed to be accessible from branch terminals. Soraya watches the screen, barely breathing. Her father had been a banker here once, before his heart gave out on a Tuesday morning with no warning and no goodbye. He'd left her nothing but a worn leather wallet, a key taped inside, and words that sounded like riddles. Go to your balance. She thought he meant emotional balance. Stability. Something soft and useless in a world that only respected hardness. She was wrong. Celine glances at Marcos, then back at the screen. Her professional mask cracks just enough to show the confusion underneath. Mr. Vardani, the system recognizes her as the lawful successor. Your credentials don't override Level V protection. Marcos doesn't move, doesn't blink, but something shifts in the air around him, something cold and calculating. Draven leans toward Celine, his voice urgent and low. Don't get involved. You know what happens to people who... I'm doing my job, Celine interrupts, but her voice wavers. The screen continues loading. For digits now. 5. Soraya's father used to come home late, always tired, always carrying files he wouldn't talk about. She remembers him sitting at their kitchen table, glasses sliding down his nose, pen moving across papers covered in numbers she didn't understand. He never looked scared, just focused, like he was building something no one else could see. Now she wonders what he was really doing. The notification blinks again. Protected funds. Authorized for release. Marcos leans against the counter, close enough that Soraya can smell expensive cologne mixed with something sharper. Danger, maybe, or just the sweat of a man who suddenly doesn't feel as untouchable as he did 5 minutes ago. He whispers, barely loud enough for her to hear. This is impossible. How much money could make the most feared man in the city look afraid? Marcos moves like a predator, circling wounded prey. His boots echo against marble as he steps around the desk, slow and deliberate, closing the distance between himself and Soraya. Up close, he's bigger than she realized, broader, the kind of man who's used to people shrinking when he enters a room. She doesn't shrink, not because she's brave, but because her knees have locked so tight she couldn't move if she tried. He stops inches from her, close enough that she can see the faint scar running through his left eyebrow, the way his jaw clenches when he's thinking, the tattoos creeping up from his collar like they're trying to escape his skin. You need to step away from the counter, he says softly. His voice drips with the kind of dominance that doesn't need volume. Whatever your father left you, it doesn't belong to you. It never did. Soraya's throat tightens. She can feel her pulse hammering in her neck, her wrists behind her eyes. Every instinct screams at her to run, to apologize, to disappear back into the invisible corners of the city where people like her belong. But her father's voice echoes louder. Go to your balance. Celine watches from behind the counter, her fingers frozen above the keyboard. Draven shifts his weight, glancing toward the exit like he's already planning his escape. Marcos tilts his head, studying Soraya the way someone might study an insect they're about to crush. You know who I am? She nods. Everyone knows who Marcos Vardani is. Philanthropist, businessman, the man who writes checks to children's hospitals while quietly running half the city's underground through shell companies and offshore accounts no one can touch. Then he continues, his voice dropping even lower, that people who cross me don't usually walk away. Security guards begin to shift positions around the hall. 3 of them, maybe 4. Soraya's vision tunnels, focusing only on Marcos's face, on the cold certainty in his eyes. Her hand tightens around the plastic key. I just want to see my balance, she whispers. It's the same thing she said when she walked in, but this time it sounds different. Less like a request, more like a line in the sand. Marcos leans in, his breath hot against her ear. You're going to hand over that account, or you won't leave this bank. Would you stand your ground if the devil himself told you to walk away? Celine's fingers fly across the keyboard. She tries another override, then another, but the system doesn't budge. The vault-level authority lights on her monitor shift from red to blue, a color she's only seen twice in 15 years of working at Ravenhall and District Trust. Both times, federal auditors showed up within the hour. Draven grabs her arm, his voice tight with panic. Celine, stop. You're gonna bury all of us. She shakes him off, eyes locked on the screen. The system won't let me stop. It's already in motion. Marcos turns from Soraya, his attention snapping to Celine like a whip. What does that mean? It means, Celine says slowly, that this account has protections I can't override. Not with branch credentials, not with executive clearance. This is federal tier. The words hang in the air like smoke. Soraya remembers her father's last days. How he'd gripped her hand with fingers too weak to hold a pen anymore. How his breathing had turned shallow and desperate. How he pulled her close and whispered with his last good breath. If anything happens to me, go to your balance. Don't trust anyone. Don't tell anyone. Just go. She'd asked him what he meant. He'd smiled, sad and tired, and closed his eyes. He died 3 hours later. Now, standing in this cold marble hall with Marcos Vardani breathing threats in her ear, she finally understands. Her father wasn't talking about money. He was talking about war. The screen flickers again. The balance begins to load, digit by digit, each number appearing slower than the last, like the system itself is hesitating. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Draven's face goes white. That's not possible. 9. The number sits on the screen, massive and impossible. Not thousands, not millions, more. Everyone stares at Soraya like she's holding a detonator. Marcos' voice cuts through the silence, low and lethal. That money was never yours. What else did her father hide in that account besides money? The screen shifts. Beneath the balance, a small notification appears, additional files attached. Celine clicks it before anyone can stop her. A list of documents unfolds, each one labeled with dates, account numbers, transaction records. Name Soraya doesn't recognize. Amounts that make her head spin. But one name appears over and over. Marcos Vardani. Her father had been a banker. Quiet, methodical, the kind of man who organized his sock drawer and color-coded his files. She used to think he was boring, safe, a man who valued order above everything else. She never realized order was his weapon. Draven leans over Celine's shoulder, scanning the documents. His breath catches. These are offshore accounts, shell companies, laundered funds routed through. He stops, his voice dying in his throat. Marcos steps forward, but Celine's hand hovers over the keyboard, ready to close the window. Don't, she warns. Soraya's mind races back to evenings at home. Her father at the kitchen table, pen in hand, papers spread out like a battle plan. She'd ask him what he was working on. He'd smile, say it was just bank stuff, nothing important. But sometimes, late at night, she'd wake up to find him still sitting there. Not working, just staring at the papers with an expression she couldn't name. Now she knows. It was grief, not for himself, but for every person Marcos Vardani had destroyed. Every business crushed, every family ruined, every life swallowed by greed, disguised as philanthropy. Her father had discovered the truth, and instead of running, instead of hiding, he'd done something no one expected. He'd stolen all back, every fraudulent dollar, every laundered payment, every blood-soaked profit. He'd traced it, collected it, hidden it in an account so protected that even Marcos Vardani couldn't touch it. Then he put Soraya's name on it, not as a gift, as a mission. Draven's voice shakes. This account could burn the city. Every syndicate connection, every dirty politician, every bribed official, it's all here. Marcos slams his hand against the counter, the sound echoing like a gunshot. That money was never yours, he snarls, and neither is your father's evidence. Was her father a hero, or had he just made his daughter the most dangerous person in the city? A guard reaches for Soraya's wrist. His fingers are an inch away when Marcos raises his hand, stopping him mid-motion. The guard freezes, confused but obedient. Marcos's eyes never leave Soraya's face as he steps even closer, invading the small bubble of space she has left. His voice drops to something barely above a whisper, the kind of quiet that feels like a threat wrapped in silk. You think that account protects you? You think federal protocols mean anything when you're standing alone in a room with me? Soraya's knees threaten to buckle. She can feel sweat pooling at the base of her spine, her hands trembling so hard the key almost slips from her grip. But she doesn't step back. Can't step back, because if she moves now, if she shows weakness, she knows exactly what happens next. People like Marcos don't negotiate. They eliminate. Draven shifts uncomfortably near the desk, his eyes darting between Marcos and the exit. He's already calculating his escape, already deciding which side of history he wants to be on when this implodes. Celine stares at Soraya, really stares, and for the first time, she notices things she missed before. The bruises on Soraya's forearms, faded but still visible beneath the sleeves of her torn shirt. The way her shoulders curl inward like she spent years trying to make herself smaller. The exhaustion carved into her face, the kind that doesn't come from one bad day, but from a lifetime of them. This isn't greed. This is survival. Marcos gestures to the guards. Two of them move to flank Soraya on either side, close enough to grab her if he gives the word. The third positions himself near the door, blocking the only exit. "We're going to have a private conversation," Marcos says smoothly. "Somewhere quieter. Somewhere we could discuss how to resolve this misunderstanding." Celine's chest tightens. She's worked in banking long enough to know what private conversation means when men like Marcos say it. It means rooms with no cameras, parking garages with no witnesses, rivers that don't ask questions. Her hand hovers over the keyboard. She thinks about her career, her reputation, the mortgage on her condo, the promotion she's been chasing for 3 years. Then she thinks about the girl standing in front of her, trembling but refusing to break. And she makes a choice. Celine slams her palm down on the emergency compliance button. The sound is deafening in the silent hall. Every door in the building locks with a mechanical thunk. Red lights flicker to life above each exit. Security cameras swivel, lenses focusing, recording everything. Federal audit mode activates. Draven's face drains a color. "Celine, what have you done?" She stands, squaring her shoulders, placing herself between Marcos and Soraya. "I protected a client. Would you risk everything to save a stranger?" The cameras hum to life. Marcos stares at Celine like she just signed her own death warrant. His jaw clenches so tight a vein bulges at his temple, his hands curling into fists at his sides. But he doesn't move. Can't move, because every camera in the building is now locked on his face, recording, transmitting, uploading to servers he doesn't control. Draven backs away from the desk, hands raised like he's trying to distance himself from a bomb. "This is insane. You've activated federal protocols. Do you understand what that means?" "It means," Celine says, her voice steadier than she feels, "that every action in this bank is now being monitored in real time. It means regulators with Level V clearance will be notified within minutes. It means if Mr. Vardani so much as touches her, federal investigators will have footage." Marcos' smile is gone, replaced by something colder. Something that promises consequences Celine doesn't want to imagine. "You just ended your career," he says quietly. "Maybe," Celine replies, "but she gets to walk out of here alive." Soraya stands frozen, barely breathing, watching this woman she's never met risk everything for her. She doesn't understand why, doesn't know what changed in Celine's mind, but she can see in her eyes something shifted. Some invisible line got crossed. The system beeps. A new notification appears on the screen. Federal audit engaged. All transactions under review. Draven runs a hand through his hair, pacing now, panic bleeding through his polished exterior. This will collapse everything. The accounts, the shell companies, the offshore transfers. Every regulator in the country will descend on this bank. Marcos turns to him slowly. "Then you better hope you didn't leave your fingerprints anywhere you shouldn't have." Draven's face goes white. One of the guards shifts, glancing at Marcos for instruction. But Marcos doesn't give one, because for the first time in longer than he can remember, he doesn't have control. The cameras are watching. The system is locked. And the girl holding the key to his entire empire is protected by laws even he can't bend. Soraya feels something strange rising in her chest. Not confidence, not yet, but something close to it. She remembers her father's hands, gentle and steady, teaching her how to tie her shoes, how to count change, how to recognize when someone was lying. He'd been preparing her for this without her knowing, training her to survive a war she didn't know was coming. A camera above the entrance swivels, lens focusing directly on Marcos. He stares up at it, then back at Soraya. For the first time, she sees something in his eyes she didn't expect. Fear, real fear, because this girl, this exhausted, invisible girl no one looked at twice, just became untouchable. Marcos steps backward, his voice tight and controlled. "This isn't over. Can technology really protect the powerless from monsters in expensive suits?" Soraya's hand shakes as she reaches for the mouse. Celine steps aside, giving her space, but staying close enough to intervene if Marcos makes a move. The screen still displays the balance, those 9 impossible digits glowing like a taunt. But beneath it, the files wait. the evidence her father spent years collecting. She clicks. A folder opens. Inside are dozens of documents, bank statements, wire transfers, emails with subject lines like offshore routing, confirm receipt, and clean funds protocol. Names she doesn't recognize attached to amounts that make her stomach turn. But it's the final file that stops her cold. A text document. No title, just a date. The day before her father died. Her vision blurs as she opens it. The words swim on the screen, but she forces herself to focus, to read each line even though her chest feels like it's caving in. Soraya, if you're reading this, it means they came for me. It means I ran out of time. I'm sorry I couldn't tell you the truth while I was alive. I'm sorry I left you alone. But you're not powerless. Everything they stole, I stole back. Every dirty dollar, every blood-soaked transaction. I traced it, recorded it, locked it away where they couldn't reach it. And now it's yours. Not the money, the truth. Finish what I started. Make them answer. Don't run. Don't hide. You're stronger than you know. I love you. Always. Tears stream down her face, hot and unstoppable. She presses a hand to her mouth, trying to hold back the sob building in her throat. Her father hadn't been preparing to retire. He'd been preparing to die, and he'd left her the one weapon powerful enough to destroy the man who killed him. Because Marcos Vardani didn't pull a trigger, didn't poison his food, didn't need to. He just applied pressure, made threats, created stress that turned a healthy man's heart into a ticking time bomb. Her father had died of a heart attack, but Marcos had killed him all the same. Draven stares at the screen, his voice barely a whisper. This evidence will collapse his entire network. Every politician he bought, every judge he owns, every business he controls, it's all here. Celine reads over Soraya's shoulder, her expression hardening with each line. She spent 15 years turning a blind eye to questionable transactions, telling herself it wasn't her problem, that staying neutral kept her safe. She was wrong. Neutrality isn't safety. It's complicity. Marcos slams his fist on the mahogany desk, the sound echoing like thunder. His voice shakes with barely controlled rage. You have no idea what you started. No idea what it cost to cross me. Soraya wipes her eyes, her hands still trembling, but her voice comes out steadier than she expected. My father already paid that cost. Marcos steps forward, but a camera swivels, tracking his movement. He stops, jaw clenched so tight it looks like his teeth might crack. This isn't over, he snarls. You've started a war you can't win. What would you do if your father left you the truth powerful enough to destroy kingdom? Soraya stands straighter. It's a small shift, barely noticeable, but Celine sees it. The way her shoulders pull back, the way her chin lifts just slightly, the way her grip on the key tightens, no longer trembling, but firm. She's not the same girl who walked into this bank an hour ago. That girl was invisible, powerless, desperate. This girl is something else. Celine steps closer, her voice low but clear. I'll help you. Whatever comes next, you won't face it alone. Draven stares at her like she's lost her mind. You're throwing your life away for someone you don't even know. No, Celine says quietly. I'm choosing a side. Finally, Marcos watches this exchange with cold calculation. He's already planning his next move, already thinking 3 steps ahead. But for the first time in years, the variables don't line up the way they should. The girl has federal protection. The evidence is locked behind systems he can't hack, and the cameras are watching everything. He's been backed into a corner by a waitress with dirt on her clothes and fire in her blood. Soraya looks at the screen one last time, at her father's message, at the balance that represents years of stolen justice finally returned. She thinks about every double shift she worked, every insult she swallowed, every moment she made herself small just to survive. She's done being small. I'm not walking away, she says, her voice quiet but unyielding. Marcos's eyes narrow. You think federal protocols will protect you forever? You think cameras will keep you safe when you're alone on a dark street? Maybe not, Soraya admits. But they'll know who did it. They'll know why. And everything my father collected will go public the second something happens to me. It's a bluff. Partially. She doesn't actually know if her father set up a dead man's switch. But Marcos doesn't know that either. And uncertainty is a weapon all its own. Marcos takes a step backward, not out of respect, not out of defeat, but out of something he hasn't felt in a long time. Caution, because this girl, this invisible, exhausted girl, just proved she's willing to burn his entire empire down. And people willing to burn everything are the most dangerous kind. Would you bet your life on a bluff if it was the only card you had left? The doors unlock with a soft click. Soraya walks toward the exit, legs unsteady but moving. Celine stays close, a silent shield between her and Marcos. Draven remains frozen near the desk, staring at the screen like it might explode. The rain has stopped. Weak sunlight filters through the windows, casting long shadows across the marble floor. Soraya steps into the light, the key still clutched in her hand, her father's words echoing in her mind. Don't run. Don't hide. She won't. Behind her, Marcos stands motionless, watching her leave. His expression is unreadable, but his hands curl into fists at his sides, knuckles white with pressure. This isn't over. They both know it, but something fundamental has shifted. The balance of power, the rules of engagement, the certainty that wealth and violence always win. Soraya pushes open the heavy glass door and steps outside. The air smells like rain and exhaust and possibility. She takes a breath, deeper than any she's taken in years. Celine follows her out, phone already in hand. I'm calling a lawyer, someone I trust, someone who specializes in. She stops mid-sentence. Across the street, a black car idles at the curb, engine running, windows tinted. No plats visible. Soraya sees it. Celine sees it. They both know what it means. But Soraya doesn't run, doesn't panic. She stands on the sidewalk, key in hand, staring at the car like she's daring it to move. The driver's window cracks open. Just an inch. Just enough. Soraya whispers, more to herself than to Celine. This is just the beginning. The car pulls away slowly, disappearing into traffic. But the message is clear. Marcos Vardani doesn't lose. And neither, apparently, does Soraya Duvit. She turns to Celine, a small, exhausted smile pulling at the corner of her mouth. Thank you. Celine nods, still staring at the spot where the car was parked. What are you going to do now? Soraya looks down at the key in her hand, at the weight of truth it represents, at the war her father started and left her to finish. Exactly what he asked me to do. She walks away, shoulders square, head high, into a city that no longer sees her as invisible. Because quiet justice doesn't announce itself with fanfare. It rises slowly, inevitably, from the people no one thought to fear. And sometimes, the richest, most powerful man in the room learns the hardest lesson of all. Never underestimate someone who has nothing to lose and everything to prove. 6 months later, Soraya sits in a conference room 40 floors above the city. The table is polished cherry wood. The chairs are leather. Floor-to-ceiling windows frame a skyline she used to see only from the ground, always looking up, never belonging. Now she's here. Across from her sit 3 federal prosecutors, 2 FBI agents, and a woman in a gray suit who introduces herself as the lead investigator for financial crimes. They've been meeting weekly since that day at the bank, since Celine pressed that button, since everything changed. The lead investigator slides a folder across the table. We've shut down 17 shell companies, frozen 43 offshore accounts, arrested 12 individuals, including 2 city council members and a district judge. She pauses, her expression unreadable. Marcos Vardani was taken into custody this morning. Soraya's chest tightens. She doesn't feel victorious, doesn't feel relieved, just tired. The kind of tired that lives in bones and doesn't wash out. What happens to the money? She asks quietly. Restitution, one of the prosecutors answers. Every victim your father identified in his documentation will be compensated. The remainder goes into a federal recovery fund. You'll receive a finder's fee, standard protocol. Soraya shakes her head. I don't want it. The room goes silent. Give it to families he destroyed. People who lost businesses, homes, futures. They need it more than I do. The investigator studies her for a long moment, then nods slowly. We can arrange that. After the meeting, Soraya rides the elevator down alone. She's traded her torn apron for clean clothes that fit properly. Cut her hair. Sleeps in an apartment with locks that work in heat that doesn't quit in January. But she still works at the food hall. Not because she has to, but because the people there see her. Really see her. And because leaving would feel like forgetting where she came from. When she steps onto the street, her phone buzzes. A text from Celine. Coffee tomorrow? My treat. Soraya smiles. Types back. Only if I can pay. She walks past the bank where it all started. Past the marble halls and mahogany desks and cameras that saved her life. The building looks smaller now. Less imposing. Or maybe she's just bigger. At home, she opens the worn leather wallet her father left behind. The key is gone now, logged as evidence, locked in some federal facility. But tucked in the billfold is a photo she's looked at 1,000 times. Her father smiling, younger, healthier, before the weight of what he discovered crushed his heart. She whispers to the image, I finished it. Somewhere across the city, Marcos Vardani sits in a cell without windows, without power, without the empire he spent decades building. And somewhere else, a waitress nobody noticed picks up a shift, unaware that she's working alongside a woman who toppled the king. Because that's how quiet justice works. It doesn't announce itself. It just shows up, does the work, changes everything, and then goes back to living. Soraya sets the photo down and makes herself tea. Simple, normal, the kind of evening her father would have wanted for her. Outside, the city hums. Inside, she finally breathes easy. The war is over, but the quiet revolution her father started, that's just beginning. If this story reminded you that power doesn't always roar, that justice doesn't always wear a cape, and that the people who change the world are often the ones nobody saw coming, share it. Tag someone who needs to hear it. And remember, your voice matters, even when the world tells you it doesn't. Especially then. Thank you for witnessing Soraya's story. Subscribe so you never miss another tale of quiet strength rising against impossible odds. Drop a comment about which moment hit you hardest. Let's keep this conversation alive.